Hi, this is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar. We've got one of my favorite guests and artists and guitar players and songwriters with Billy Howerdel. I'm totally excited to hang with him. It's been a long time coming. I want to thank Monica Side Evanson for hooking us up, and originally Lyle Workman and Sean Bevan takes a nation here. All right. I'm sure you know Billy. He's an amazing songwriter. He's written or co-written many hits and a ton of very emotionally driving songs. He's most well known as a co-founder, co-songwriter, lead guitarist, and producer of A Perfect Circle, as well as in his solo project, Ashes Divide. He's also got an interesting story in that he was teching for Fishbone when they opened up for Tool, and he struck up a friendship with Maynard from Tool. The two of them founded A Perfect Circle in 1999. Perfect Circle's first and second albums, Mare de Noms and 13th Step, went platinum, and all four of their albums opened up in the top 5 Billboard charts. Billy's also had some placements in movies and video games. He's got a great new solo record out. It's called What Normal Was, where he plays, what a great title that is, where he plays, like, from now, I think for the rest of the time, you can use that title, where he plays everything on there but drums. It's an awesome record. It's got some really cool ambient electronic rock, great songwriting as always, and very good lyrics that we'll talk about. Man, thank you so much for your time. So happy to have you on the show.
Continue. I liked all that. Actually, it felt like we were opening up a court case. Like, you know, this is the evidence laid before you. That's awesome.
Right
sometimes, you know, when I'm off tour, but you know, when you're home and you just are a chauffeur and a cook for your kids, sometimes, you know, even if that's for a week, you kind of forget what the hell you're doing. Like, I go, really? I do it? Oh, that's right. I play guitar. Yeah. Okay. I'm glad you called me back up to speed.
Yeah, man, I hear you. There you go. First of all, I want to congratulate you on the new record. It's really great. And we were talking earlier. I want to congratulate you for working so hard on the promotion cycle, because you're doing a lot of interviews. I know it's draining, and I appreciate your time. And I'm going to try not to ask you the same questions you get asked all the time, but I do apologize in advance for the one or two I know I will ask. So thanks. All right. How'd you become a guitar tech, and what prompted you to do that? Like, did you have a plan that, okay, I'm going to become a tech and then I'm going to be a this or a musician or a producer, or like or did you just random? How did that all come about?
I mean, the genesis of me getting into behind the scenes at all was getting into stage lighting in high school. You know, I think it was right around the time I picked up a guitar, but maybe a little before, actually, that I was in this TV science class in high school. What a cool class that was for, you know, the 80s. I mean, I met a lot of people that had that same exposure, right? And, you know, it was basically in the class, who wants to, which one of you guys want to run the lights for the assemblies and plays and whatever concerts come through, you know, and me and my buddy raised our hands. We didn't know what we were doing. And the teacher, you know, filled us in, like, this is a Lico, this is a Fresnel, this is a Spotlight, this is a Parcan. This is how you tie in power. And God, the asbestos that was coming down off those wires in that days, and the danger of you tapping into 240 volt power, you know, talk about how things were different then, right? But I learned a bit of that. I took a crack at that, and I really liked lighting. And from there, I remember I mentioned this to my parents, and my dad knew somebody that worked on some Broadway play in the city. I think it was called Starlight Express. Not the greatest theater of all time, but it was very tech heavy. I
actually remember that. It was a long time that play ran.
Yeah, and it was like a roller skating themed high tech for its day thing. So I got to, you know, I went in there kind of bright eyed, but also, you know, this was completely mysterious. But it gave me the bug of, like, when the lights go down and the fog machines hit and the crowd's paying attention. That was like the first taste of, I want to be a part of this. But the real solidifying part was cut to a few years later. I started playing guitar in 1987, I think it was, the Momentary Lapse of Reason tour with Pink Floyd at Giant Stadium, which now is, what is it called?
Yeah.
It's called something now.
Meadowlands.
Yeah, it's Meadowlands. It's
the Meadow. No. Right.
It's like 100,000 seat, you know, stadium, and I'm sitting in the nosebleed seats, and now I've told this story many times, so I'm sure this is, if anyone's heard this before, forgive me, but like, I just got my driver's license. I just went through that whole thing where you go to DMV and the person behind the counter is miserable under fluorescent lights and hates being there. I'm so excited to be there. But I was like, you know, trying to think of what I'm going to do with my life at that point. I knew I wasn't college material. I just I'm a bit dyslexic. Well, I'm probably very dyslexic, can't spell a word and, never read a book. And so I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. And really, when I was up there thinking about my life as I was in my senior year, ready to go forward, I'm like, I want to be part of this. What those ants that are down on stage wearing black shirts that I can barely see, and the Pink Floyd crew, they must get paid. It really just dawned on me that I'm like, okay, those are guys setting up the lights, and I don't even know what a guitar tech was at that point. But when I graduated high school, I started working for bands around New York and New Jersey. I just answered an ad in the Village Voice in New York City. And I went to this place in the middle of New Jersey to answer an ad to be a lighting guy for a local club band. And answer the ad, went down there. The guy ran me through the whole setup process, which I knew a bit from the high school program. And when it came time to start, I filled out the paperwork, and he looked at my birthday and he goes, you're 18, you're about to be 18 next week. Like, you just wasted my time. Get the hell out of here. Like, he was so pissed. He's like, you're going to be in bars. You got to be 21 years old. Left, got a call back. And a couple of days later, the guy goes, okay. He was, in full Jersey fashion. Like, I don't know if I can swear on here, but it's just like every expletive.
Yeah, you can say whatever.
All right, fucking knucklehead. Like, you wasted all my time. Can you show up on Wednesday? The knucklehead that I just hired, he screwed me over. You keep your mouth shut. Don't touch a drink. I go, yes, sir. And so I just started working in clubs. Like, I just started working for bands doing lighting. And as I started working for bands doing that, and I worked for bigger bands, and I saw some other guys that were moving up out of the club scene into the touring, national and international circuit, I just realized there's something called a guitar tech. And at that time, I just started playing guitar, and I was like, I didn't want to be away from it any longer than I needed to. So I just kind of tried to figure out, what is a guitar tech? How can I be one? And it was the most coveted job. I mean, this is like, back then, at least, there was just no great way to get into it. And I did everything I could to try and impress whoever I could to be able to go tune their guitars or take care of their amps or learn that whole craft. And, I know this is like, every young person hearing this is so sick of it, but like the lack of internet or the lack of knowledge, or you just didn't know to go to. There was no mentor to go to do this, or it wasn't easy to find. I just tried to find out what it was to be a guitar tech, because I also knew they made decent money. They were like the ones getting paid on the road. So that was it. I just kind of found my way through and met, as I worked at the Stone Pony in Asbury Park, New Jersey, I was one of the stagehands.
Stone Pony.
I became like one of the stage managers. So if there was ever a show coming through, at a festival or something like that, or like a collaboration of artists, I was, I think it was a fateful day where Joe Walsh came in and his tech kind of gave me the whole rundown. And I was like, okay, I finally got my demystifying explanation as to what this is and how it could be. And just one thing led to another, and another guy went on tour and he goes, hey, this kid Billy would be good. You should bring him out on tour. And I went on my first tour for no pay. It was just per diem. I went to Europe, with the Throbs.
With who?
This band called the Throbs. They were signed to DGC, David Geffen label.
David Geffen, yeah.
And they were like a wild, almost like Black Crowes meets Guns N' Roses meets, it was like, it's actually cool. I've listened to it in recent years, and it's like, it was a cool band. But they were full blast, man. They were, hard to keep up with, and they got dropped, and but that was my entry into the touring world, and then went on to Fishbone from there and a bunch of other bands.
What a cool story. I think it's more, you were right. I agree with you. I think it's more of a mystery how to become a guitar tech than it is how to become a musician.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe not anymore. I mean,
really is.
Now you could Google it, right? But
I'm sure. Yeah, but back then, how the hell, you're right. How the hell did you find that out?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Were your folks supportive of you doing that?
My mom was, supportive, she was supportive in anything that, I was into. I think I had, once I crossed that barrier into
That's nice.
15 years old, where she realized I wasn't going to be too much of a problem. She was kind of down for whatever I wanted to do. My dad was like, when are you going to get a real job? When are you going to get a real job? His thing was, he was more so on the talking me out of going to college. get a trade with your hands that no one can take away from you. That was his, I'm sure there's
join a union.
Yeah. Like that was just
Yeah.
my trajectory. I didn't really know anything past that. And all my sisters went to college. I was kind of be the first one to not. I'm sure he was just, seeing the writing on the wall for me. But yeah. So I once I got my first paycheck, like I said, my first tour was no paycheck, like zero. But I got to go to England. The Throbs opened up for Mr. Big, which was like a whole thing. It was Billy Sheehan and Paul Gilbert and like all these shredder guys. And, from there, once I made my first good amount of money, I think once I made $600 a week, and I would send him the paychecks because I'm out on the road. So I'd send him a check to put in my bank account. Like, oh, all right. Like all of a sudden it was a legitimate business,
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
So
very cool, man. Thank you for sharing that. It's funny. I've listened to a lot of interviews in prepping for this. This is the first time, maybe it's because I'm a city guy. You're like, I hear you're full on New Jersey now, man.
It's funny. I think I seep back into it somehow, especially with my friends, especially after a drink. Yeah.
Well, bring it on, man. I'm like, wow, this is the first time. So I feel good. Actually,
it's funny accents because it's not intentional either way. Like so many of my friends here go, I don't hear any Jersey. And then all of a sudden they go, oh my God, here it comes out. So I don't know what that is.
There you go. So here's a question. I know you've been asked a lot. I think this is going to be the last one that we're going to repeat. I'd love if you could share the story about the first time you played in front of a large audience when you were teching for Nine Inch Nails. Apparently something happened to Trent and he wasn't going to make it back in time to start the song. So you wound up playing Eraser, which is a cool track, but that's one of the creepiest videos I've ever seen in my life. Very weird.
Yeah. So I'm a tech now. Fast forward to 1994, I'm teching for Nine Inch Nails. I came on right before they did the Woodstock, the big famous Woodstock show. And the Downward Spiral tour was like none other. And I mean, people, and I throw exaggerations out like anybody else, I'm sure, but I can't imagine anything before or after that to compete with the chaos and the danger of that show. It was crazy. Maybe G.G. Allen, but it wasn't like people trying to, defecate on themselves and kill themselves. But it was crazy. And so there was destruction all the time. One particular night he was Trent. I was Trent's tech, and the screen comes down for a middle part of the show. So I think everyone lets even more loose on stage at that point, and they did. And it was the stage was destroyed. Trent's laying on the ground. I think he's bleeding. He definitely got the wind knocked out of him or something. He was just laying there, not moving. On the side of the stage, we had a digital clock with a countdown as to how much time before the next song started. And like I said, this one had a little mini movie in the middle of the set that you had like a 2 or 3 minute break for. And so we got down to the last few seconds. Yeah. And I'm sitting there with the guitar ready to go to hand it to him. And he's still laying on the ground. And I was like, I probably should have been calling the doctors over, but I said, like, come on, let's go. It's show's starting, I'm like 30 seconds, 20 seconds, we're down to 8 seconds. Do you want me to play this or what? And he just says, yes. And, barely able to breathe. And luckily I had known how to play all the parts because I did Trent sound checks for a lot of the sound checks. I had done it to play along with the band. If he was out doing press, I just like to take the pressure off. And the production manager asked me to learn everything too, because prior to that, Robin Fink had broken or sprained his finger. So we almost had to cancel shows. And I think Jordy from Marilyn Manson wanted playing guitar, augmenting what he couldn't play. And so they were like, look, just for protection, let's just make sure you techs know how to play their parts. So I was ready to go. And then all of a sudden, So cut back to 8 seconds to go. Come on, let's go. You want me to play this or what? And Trent says, yes. And I just, oh my God. So I step literally into the overhead spotlight and start playing Eraser. And, and it was as trippy for me as it was for anyone on that stage, whether it was Danny, Charlie, Podboy, or Robin, the other band members or the crew looking at me like, what the hell's going on? It was surreal. And yeah, that's the first time I ever played in front of anyone, really. I mean, I had a high school cover band that played at the Stone Pony. We played a cover set of like 20 minutes. You know, these are all cover songs. And then at a frat party at Rutgers College in a high school backyard party. That's all I remember ever doing. And yeah, that was a trip. That was definitely a trip. But it's like anything else. I was nervous. But once you know what you're doing, you're less nervous. If you get out there and somebody goes, "Hey, play that song," and you have to figure it out on the fly. That's the most terrifying nightmare of all time, right? If you know what you're doing, then you're. I knew those songs pretty well, so it was fun. But I was just worried that the production manager would come tackle me and think I had gone crazy to get me off the stage, thinking like I had knocked Trent out, or I had all these kind of thoughts going on in my head, like I don't know what's going on.
While you're playing.
Yeah. I was like, I'm going to be arrested, beat up. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to have a gang of crew guys saying, thinking I lost my mind.
Did you stay on the set after that song?
Yeah. So like after that, well, the weird thing is like I'm doing, if anyone knows the song, there's a guitar, the drums start, and the guitar and drums are together. And then the vocal comes in. And so it's literally, so to set the stage, I mean, if I'm on stage, there's opera gauze, or it's called shark's tooth scrim or opera gauze. It goes in front of you. The projector from the front projects on that, but you can't see anything behind it. You're completely in the dark until you're lit. So the cue is, as soon as I start playing, there's a spotlight that comes over my head. So aside from the drummer, I'm the only one lit on stage, right? And that's Trent's position. So right when I'm done with the guitar part, I kind of scoot out of the way, and he comes in to sing, and he grabs me by the shirt and pulls me back into there as he's singing. And he just like gives me the look like, hang out. And then as we're singing the big chanting, kill me, hate me, like he's going, sing, here. So I just sang on the mic with him as I'm playing, and it was awesome, and I thought it was really gracious and cool of him to pull me in. And then, and so after that night, he said, "Yeah, it was really fun. Let's do it again. So we just kept doing it for a few more nights. I think it was like a good week or 2 weeks of shows we did it for.
How did you feel after that, or after the first night, and then after how did that?
It was
make you
fun,
feel?
but it was also a little of that. There's a little bit of that undercurrent when you on the crew, like, okay, so now you think you're hot shit, so you have to kind of temper all that and go like, yeah, that was cool. You can't celebrate it too much. Who am I going to celebrate that with? I'm celebrating it more now, 26 years later than I did then, or 28 years. Oh my God, that was 28 years ago.
Yeah, well, man, it's so great. It's a very cool thing to celebrate. You should celebrate it. It's awesome. And that you had the courage to say, hey, man, do you want me to? I mean, I know you probably did it which is a really nice thing. You did it in the spirit of service, which is really cool about it.
Yeah.
Like you were wanting to, like, hey, man, I mean, I know you weren't like, oh, this is my shot.
Yeah, exactly. No,
and they know you weren't like that at all either.
No, I mean, this is the most, low stakes thing of like, you rise to the occasion, like there's people that rise to the occasion for horrific reasons. Yeah. This was kind of a fun one, but still no less scary. Yeah. So, yeah.
I think that's awesome, man. That's really cool. Is that one of the like most important moves you've made
in music? No,
unintentionally, albeit.
No, and I actually forgot about it for a while. I kind of shared that story in more recent years, and maybe I did in the past, but I thought it was I told somebody like, you got to tell that story. That's pretty cool, So
it's really cool.
No, but I think in thinking about the early Perfect Circle days and getting on stage for the very first time with APC at the Viper Room, which is, if anyone knows, it's a tiny club in West Hollywood, 200 seats maybe, but it was a festival amongst other big bands. It was a benefit for Keith Morris from the Circle Jerks, who had some medical bills that needed tending to that he couldn't afford. So right before us, Gibby from Butthole Surfers was like doing a weird DJ experimental set. And then we got up as Maynard from Tool's new thing. I think we had a band name. I think it was called Perfect Circle. And we had like 6 songs or 7 songs ready to play. The moment before that, I was definitely nervous. Like that was,
Yeah.
even though we're, playing in front of 200 people, um, it's just like a lot of things happening all of a sudden. Like people come in, oh, cool, you're doing that thing with Maynard. I can't wait to hear it. I just met Johnny Depp, who owns the club. Like, hey, man, like, nice to meet you. I can't wait to hear your thing. Like, oh, shit. There's a lot of pressure mounting. And that, I was pretty nervous. I remember which booth I was sitting in and what it felt like, and then got on stage, and it was great. Again, like preparation, I was definitely prepared. I mean, I lived those songs. So that was it. It was all good,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You obviously have a really good work ethic. Where do you think that came from?
Luck. You want to get into free will for a minute? I don't know.
Yeah, man, whatever you, let's just be you. You just be yourself, man. And I'll be myself and we'll do it.
And I think, I could this whole, it's funny because you have theories and feelings about things, right? And then you get older and you have language that you can apply to them. I never heard of meritocracy until, I got to be into my adulthood, and then you start thinking about the merit of like, I pull myself up, and I do this and I do that. Yeah. I grew up from a young age wanting things, right? Or maybe I just wanted respect. So, I mean, I had a paper route as early as possible. I had 4 older sisters. They all had paper routes. I was a Boy Scout. I was on the swim team, wrestling, football, baseball. I was just active, and did whatever. But some of it was, okay, you worked. Like there was in the lake community I was on, you had an odd jobs list, and it was like, oh, Billy Howerdel is available for shoveling snow, yard work, this and that, or a paperwork, or whatever it was. Yeah. You just like, I didn't think of it as anything different. I was just kind of, that was the community I was in, but it was also the person that I happened to get, whatever DNA I was lucky enough to, or lucky enough to come out of the womb with, or the upbringing that I had. It was just like, yeah, that just seemed completely natural. I don't know. I don't know that it was, that I need a pat on the back for that, or you're lucky that you have that drive. I always had a drive to be,
right.
From a paper route that turned into working construction. I, framed houses, removed roofs. My girlfriend at the time's father was he had like a roof disposal business, but he was involved with a lot of construction people. So he got me my first like real, more steady job, which was doing masonry work. And, you're basically the assistant to a mason. That's why I had no fingertips when I was a kid. Perfect thief accessory. But, worked in a factory deburring metal off of ball bearings and things like that. Then worked in a computer place doing shipping and receiving, UPS. And, I don't know. I just never, I wanted my own car. I wanted to buy my own car. I mean, grew up in a rural town. Yeah. If you didn't have a car, it's not like today, like where you have Uber, like the keys to, the keys to freedom were having a car. That was your whole life, yeah. Right? So,
yeah, totally.
That was it. That was the drive. I wanted a nice thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. I think it's awesome. Before we dig into your career, I just want to talk about Gilmour briefly, because I'm a huge Gilmour fan. He's pretty much been my number one guitarist since I first put the needle on the record and heard Pink Floyd. What about his playing is, because I've read that you're a Gilmour fan. What about his playing is so like, does it for you? So moving for you?
It's only, I grew up with it being DNA of musical listening and then probably of playing too, but didn't realize it because it's not. David Gilmour, I always had a reputation, even amongst, like, I started playing because my buddy Rob Coppell was a guitar player. He was a shredder. He was into all the you get into like this almost neoclassical and then fusion players and like all the really, I would say, nerdy stuff that I kind of tapped into a little bit of that with him. But I was more into listening to, at the age of 11 or so, I started getting into Susie and the Banshees and The Cure and Killing Joke and many all the other things that touch around that era. And which he hated, but he would. He's the one that kind of got me into maybe the first two Randy Rhoads records that just had come out at that time with Ozzy, and so yeah, I think I now I'm spinning off into all these memories too, and I'm forgetting the the beginning of your question, but
That's good, man. That's good.
It was, he's the one that got me into playing because I got to pick up his guitar, or I just go watch him play. And as I started playing more, I don't know. Well, tell me your question again, because I'm literally dropping it.
I was just, what about Gilmour?
Gilmour
was so moving for you?
I think from Rob getting into all this stuff, like, oh, it's cool if you could do, 30-second note pick sweeps and things like this. And the things I kind of thought that's what I wanted to do. As I started playing and got better and was able to play some of those more technical things badly, really, if I think about it now. And then realizing I hit a point of playing, like I got better, is like, I want something else. The music I listen to is different than this stuff that I'm trying to play. Gilmour was always the one that gave almost like unspoken permission to be like, you didn't need so many notes. It was the space in between the notes. It was the way that you played, the quality, it's almost
the economics of his note selection is phenomenal.
So it's just, the quantity versus quality kind of argument. And there's no right answer. It's just like whatever you're, wired for, whatever touches you in that kind of way. And for me, for sure, I mean, I played, and mostly The Wall. I mean, The Wall was the record that I think more so for vocals, because it was more, I just liked singing that record. That was one of the first records that I'd liked to sing, Roger Waters even more so. And it was kind of weird, and I don't even know how you describe his vocal, but somewhat unhinged, sort of in tune, but a little bit more insane asylum, singing. And but David Gilmour's playing was just like, it was the steady foundation, admirable. Nobody could talk shit on David Gilmour, I don't think. I mean, I never heard anybody go like, oh, fuck that guy. No, he's amazing.
He's awesome. Do you ever see that website, Gilmourish?
No.
There's a website called Gilmourish, and I didn't realize this. It's about everything related to Gil. You want to know how he got the, how he got his sound on Atom Heart Mother. It's all laid out for you there. And but the guy who runs it also happens to be a prog musician, and he's got a whole bunch of records. I'm actually having him on the show in a few weeks here. I didn't know he was a musician, so I wanted to talk to him about like what got him into all that and stuff. It's just it's like a cult thing. I'm not a member of it. I mean, I'm a Gilmour fan. I'm not really a cult member like that, but
But it is funny.
He does. It's
funny because even for him, right? Once you make a record, I'm sure he's made those records, and they're almost, some records come together quite quick, especially when you think of them in retrospect, right? You're even if I could think back to Mer de Noms, like a lot of people to this day. I mean, I just got off doing a club tour, and a lot of people come up and share stories of what that record means to them. And you think about the time it took to write it, and especially make it. You were kind of pulled in so many directions, and I'm sure it's like that for David Gilmour. It's not like you're sitting in a lab for a decade crafting this thing. It's different than a movie. It's funny because movies don't have the same exact effect, but those are the things that start on the first of the decade and then end at the end of the decade, right? Like if you're making some blockbuster movie. But it is weird to go back now and think like it's out of your hands. You release it into the world. I mean, when Animals or when The Wall or something came out, once that's done, you're kind of moved on to the next thing. But in the listener's mind and heart, it lives forever. And you start to blend your own, I start to blend my own experience into what other people's experiences of listening to the record and taking it in. I can tell you what it was like making it, but it is an interesting thing. I mean, it's sort of what, in a way, it's sort of what I named my new solo record because of. I mean, I almost purposely don't want to speak too clearly about this because the discovery is the part that you fumble through. Like you fumble through a conversation, and therefore the other person in the conversation can kind of interject, and you find the truth, whatever the truth is. And for me, what normal was, is talking about what music felt like when we were kids. And you can't, in 2022, you can't explain what 1980 The Wall was. It's really hard because there's too many points of contact that need to hit your heart and first time novel experiences that make it the way it is. So I think some movies succeed in this and some don't, but it's almost like you need a novel or a movie, probably more of a novel, because there's much more of an inner voice going on. But that's kind of what I wanted to get into on thinking about naming this record, What Normal Was, is like in talking about it. Because I kind of want to know, what did you feel like hearing The Wall for the first time? Or, you're a little older than me.
I remember. I remember I had a phonograph. It was like a box thing that you open up with the lid and the speakers on the top, and the phonograph is plug it in. And I remember listening to it, and someone gave it to me as a gift, like a distant relative. And I'd never heard anything like it. It was just so. I think that was the most I've ever been honed in on something in my whole life, to that level of focus. It really drew me in. It was very compelling for me.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, right? I mean, there's some records which are great that you can put on while cleaning the house, and there's some that command your attention to completely lock in.
Yeah, well, this commanded my attention. Yeah, very much so.
But I mean, again, the old question of if it came out today, what would happen with it? I don't know that we'd be talking about it, or does that make it?
Depends how many followers on social media Pink Floyd had. I hate to say it, but that's the answer.
Well, it depends if David Gilmour guzzled a gallon of ketchup in the recording studio and somebody filmed it and then it became viral,
Right.
He took the one hot chip challenge, and then fuck, did you check out that guy? That's it's.
Or him and Roger were fighting in the studio, and they got it on film.
It's crazy, man. I never saw Idiocracy all the way through. I saw enough of it to be terrified. Did you see that movie?
A long time ago, I did when it came out.
I do have to go back and revisit it. But somebody was watching. I was like, this is way too close to reality, like now, and this is not. I can't do it, But that's unfortunately to bring it to what makes you percolate to the top of people's attention is an interesting thing, But I mean, there's still
very interesting.
I guess there's still enough people that do want music that commands their attention instead of, I can't wait to skip to the next thing, the dopamine hit of whatever algorithm is, a lot of music now is written by algorithm, whether it's intentional or not, but you're in there with like a corporate mentality, and some of it's great. And you could say like, there's great music that I hear that's new music, and some of it that gets more attention is things that I think are crafted to the algorithm. And that's not a good thing in the long run. I think like, yes, it's just like food. I always explain music like food to my kids. Like, if I just gave you cotton candy, you would, of course you're going to take that over the steak, and broccoli, but you're already going to feel better. What's lasting longer, and what's, it truly is, I think, a good analogy to think about what makes you feel good, ongoing, what stays with you longest, what's going to happen to you if you just eat cotton candy, for every meal, you're not going to last 20 days. So, and then you'll get sick of it and you'll think like, I just hate food. No, you don't hate food. You hate fucking cotton candy. Like you hate the way sugar makes you spike and fall. So I don't know. I mean, but to each his own. It's just like everyone likes what they like, but there is something to be said about having some kind of heart within your music. And that's just, always, again, we grew up in an era that kind of valued that. There was also hair metal that was vapid and just about getting laid and getting fucked up. And that was fun too, but there's only so long that lasts. And that was a dinosaur kind of culture that kind of went away. But there's things like Pink Floyd that stuck around like a steak ration,
Yeah,
like an army ration that's been freeze dried. No, that's a bad analogy for
totally.
Gilmour.
No, but I get what you're saying, especially with the heart stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, I mean, this is a bigger conversation, but I think one of the problems is the immediacy of the cell phone. I think that's taken away a lot of the emotional, like I listen to my kids, and this particularly my daughter, because she talks more about it, and then nobody, not about her, but she's just saying, no, nobody wants to commit to have a relationship. And I'm like, I don't think they want to commit to have a relationship with anybody, like whether it's a partner or just a buddy. It's like, and I think the lack of connection is driven by the everybody's in here, man.
Yeah. And it is like
whatever.
Especially relationships. I do get a little worried about that, with especially seeing young people and not knowing how to connect, not even understanding what it is to, there's a couple levels to this. Some of it's, well, let's say guys are terrified that they're going to be considered a sexual predator or something like that if they make an advance. And there's a dance that happens right when you're a kid and you're trying to find your, like you're playing the game, but there's people that obviously go too far. But I think the err on the side of caution goes too far, where it's like people don't even know, and they just go, I'm just going to tap out on reality and go into this.
Right, I'm going to go play video games,
or I'm going to text him toy, and I'm going to play the game, and not, I'm not going to call. They're going to call me 3 times before or they're going to text 3 times before I text them back. And some of that's natural, but it's like the unnatural part of not knowing someone's facial expression while you're in front of them, not knowing what it is to have uncomfortable silence, or figuring out the next thing, And I think that just the lack of, it's just bad on every level, because it really does. I mean, just thinking about romance, we're talking about music, but also like within romance and in friendships, and just like what it is to count on somebody. We got to figure it out. Like, I don't know what the answer is, because it's what we have. I mean, it's what's in front of us, but we are all part of this experiment we didn't really sign up for. I mean, of course we bought our phones, but we didn't really know. There was no side effect.
We didn't sign up for it. Yeah. That's a great point. I like that, man. All right. That was the, Billy and Craig sounding like old men part of the show. I want to talk about Ashes Divide.
Yeah.
So you started Ashes Divide as a solo project when A Perfect Circle took a break, and you released an album called Keep Telling Myself It's All Right. Same, you played all the instruments and sang and did everything except drums. Great songwriting there.
Thanks.
If you're comfortable answering this, Billy, I was curious why you decided not to release that under your own name like you just did with What Normal Was.
Because releasing under my own name was a terrifying, well, not even a thought. I don't know that it ever came to my thought process at all when I'm going through. I have a list of band names that were, like considering for Ashes Divide. I had finished the record. I had mixed the record. I was signed to Island Def Jam. I had everything coming up, but I had no band name. And I mean, it literally got down to the wire where the record company is like, look, you got to name this project. Like, this is, but never was it like, going to be called my name. I was always going to hide behind a moniker, and that's, I guess, a pejorative way of saying it, right? Like, you're going to hide behind a moniker, or like, that's just what I thought was cool. Like, that's what looked cool on a t-shirt to me, was a band name, or what I was used to.
Yep.
I never thought of it. Never thought of calling it Billy Howerdel. But this time around, this new record was going to be called Ashes Divide, second record, whatever that was going to be. And honestly, it really came down to going out. It got brought up by a booking agent first. It's like, hey, I could probably get you on festivals as Billy from A Perfect Circle, easier, or something like that. I was like, all right, like it was a piece of data, like whatever. And then cut to my birthday last year. I went out to dinner with a few musician friends, 3. Josh Freese, if you don't know, has a solo record. Greg Pucciato from Dillinger Escape Plan and Black Queen got a solo record. And Jerry Cantrell, got a solo record and was just doing the merch for his solo record. And we did a little listening party. We went out to Jerry's car. We went out for Thai food, and we go out to the parking lot, and we were all talking about
the Jerry's car for a listening party.
Car, and we listened to
That's
2
awesome.
songs on his new record. We heard Tone and Brighton, like the first 2 tracks on his record. It was awesome. And then we went over to my car. We literally got out of his car, like a little clown car situation, got right into mine, which was right next to it, and go listen to my car. And I won't say what car it is, but we have the exact same car and the same color. So, yeah.
That's wild. Did you? That's wild. Holy shit.
Going to my car and listening to 2 songs, and they were just like, and now Josh played on the record. He knew it. Greg had heard the record, but Jerry, he goes, you got to use your name. Like all the back and forths that we were talking about using a band name versus your own name. All 3 of them were really almost like adamant about this, And Greg put the final nail in the coffin. He said, "Look, dude, when the first Ashes record," and it's true, I listen back to it now and I go, "That's me singing." It's kind of a character that I'm playing. All music is, right? You're kind of tapping into whether you are, tapping into the influences of when you're a kid or whatever. Singing wise, and I've really just discovered this in talking about it in interviews, but really the vocal approach for the first Ashes record in 2008 was me being the backup singer in Perfect Circle, singing harmonies above Maynard's parts. A little bit. I think that's just where I was physically as a singer. And then this, time has passed and I'm making this new record, and I really did want to kind of dive into what would it be like to finish out my demos like I normally do. The demos of APC and the demos for Ashes Divide sound like the beginnings of what this record, what Normal was, sound like. I kind of got push them to their completion instead of like going, okay, with Perfect Circle, instead of this sounding like a drum machine Cocteau Twins thing, which a lot of those, the first record of Mer de Noms, like, if I think about 3 Libras or The Hollow especially and things like that, they were very comfortably within a Cocteau Twins record. But then go, kind of my love of heavy music, I want to put 2 guitars, bass, and drums and do it that way. And that's what that became. Now I'm going back to like almost like plan, original plan. So now this record sounds like my earliest influences, or really what it would be if I was a musician at whatever, 15 or something. And cutting back to our conversation with Jerry, Josh, and Greg, Greg's like, dude, when I hear you sing this record, it's the same voice that is on my answer machine, or when you're talking to me right now, singing, as opposed to Ashes, which is, know. So in that kind of way, it just did feel like, okay, now I have a purpose. That makes sense to me. Okay, maybe my name might make sense now. This is a little bit more authentically, at least vocal wise, a little more me.
Do you think you're more confident now? It's probably had a part to do with why your singing was different?
For sure.
2 years of experience. I would imagine.
In tapping back into that mindset back then, there was a lot to prove. I'm, come off of 3 records with APC. Maynard's got quite a good reputation as a singer. So then,
right.
You start, the demons in your head start going, why are you doing this?
Oh my
and the
God,
reason
dude.
why I'm doing it within anything is like, I love writing music and I want to stay, active, but then there's also the bad parts of like, why are you doing this? And I try to ignore all those things, but at that time I'm younger than I am now. And you get caught up in a little bit of,
it's hard,
especially when you're self-producing and you don't have like, I didn't have like the producer to hold my hand emotionally through it.
Yeah. Well, it's a great record. I'm happy you did it. Do you feel good that you did it now? Like that?
Yeah. I don't have regrets of,
Seemed like you do.
anything. You know what I mean? I do think like at the time, that's what made sense. And again, would I make that record now? No, I wouldn't have made any record the same as I did then now,
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
On that first Ashes record, I love my favorite tracks on there are Wish and The Stone. And I wanted to ask you a question about some of the lyrics on The Stone. I thought this is really clever. You said, we survive what we can't change. And I thought that was very simple, but very profound in that, like, we get through everything, but it's those things we experience that we wish we could change. Those are the experiences that we feel like we survived them. And I thought that was pretty clever. And if you remember, how did that come to you? Or like, maybe what's the backstory to that song?
I think I had the title for the record first. So I think Keep Telling Myself It's All Right. There was a kind of theme of denial within that record that kind of keeps popping up.
Oh, so that was like you giving yourself a prep talk.
A little bit. I mean, I think it with the thoughts of ego
for
and denial,
especially
ego, even as a kid, I thought, like, what is the ails of the world? And it's ego, like your ego getting in the way, people not letting go of things, people not coming to the table with their best intentions. Sometimes there's a zero sum, winner take all kind of thing that, on a level of evolution, makes sense if you're trying to not be killed by the animal that's in front of you.
Yeah, by a saber-toothed tiger.
There's the cooperation of society, why we're able to move forward and have, a society in general is because we work well together, right? I mean, we're and that's kind of the move forward is like, and thinking about ego is a thing that gets in the way of it. And the denial of our ego. I mean, so many people, and more than ever. I mean, now, unfortunately, I don't know. It's because we are older, but things are. It's not. I mean, things are definitely different now. The ego and the whether you want to say it's people putting themselves in boxes or the partisanship or the absolute conviction you have, like as if the heart can never be wrong. Like the ego is a thing that just gets us so much in trouble instead of like listening, So I think like even back then in 2008, it was 2006 and 2007 when I was really writing that record. I could just see that as my, friendships or relationships, and even if they weren't close ones, even if they were kind of secondary, tertiary kind of relationships, you could just see the ego part become the most interesting. And I think the thing, that you present yourself as, but also that you get in your own way on, and Keep Telling Myself It's All Right for me was, you're just kind of getting through this like everybody else. You're in denial like everybody else.
Yeah.
And even if we get back to what we talked about 10 minutes ago about kids and relationships and romance and whatever it is, you at a certain point, you don't have it all figured out. And that's kind of the beauty of everything, right? You're hoping that this feeling is novel. You're hoping that this isn't old hat, and I don't know that it's not always a bad thing. I mean, your denial of fake it till you make it. I could rewind to me being a guitar tech. We're talking about I'm working for local bands, and I get pulled up into the next echelon of touring crew. One add-on story to that is like the denial of like. Or I just went to a music store, Sam Ash in Paramus, New Jersey, and went and pretended that I had a bunch of money and that my parents were going to buy me all this.
I used to go to that mall,
and they were going to buy me all this gear that I definitely couldn't afford. And I asked the poor salesman to like show me how to use an H3000 harmonizer and a TC2290 and all these things so I could learn how to be a guitar tech. And
right.
I had to fake it till I had to go to the guys in Fishbone who said, can you deal with that piece of gear? This. I go, yeah, I will take care of that. I had no idea how to take care of that. I had to figure out how to take care of that, so that's the denial I was in,
Good.
so, but yeah, I think that, getting back to we survive what we can't change. I mean, that's in for me, the limitations that I have, I mean, there's many things I wish I was. There's many strengths I wish I had that I admire in other people and that I try and work towards. But again, I don't know, my wiring is what my wiring is. I mean, I've got my shortcomings that, I try and work past, but I know that they're what they are. And there's many things in other people that the perfection that I'm expecting in myself or in other people that you kind of have to let go. And having, me having an alcoholic father that is, at a young age being upset that if he loved me enough, right, why would you not stop drinking? You could see the pain that inflicts on me or anyone around me, right? And then you realize you get to a certain age or an understanding, like, I'm going to love you for what you are, what you're capable of giving, right? You're just not able. Eventually, you have to be able to let go and just say, I am okay with what you are, and I'm gonna experience you for what you're capable of giving, at that time. So I think a lot of that lyric was probably reflecting on that stuff with him, and in general, like a lot of anything in relationships that you're just kind of you're trying to just accept that nobody's perfect. I mean, that's kind of another angle to say it from.
Wow, dude, you're like so fucking cool to talk to. Thank you. I mean, like, it's nice, man. You're so. Have you ever seen ACOA?
No.
That book, the workbook. It's adult. It's a 12-step program. It's called Adult Children of Alcoholics. I went through that program. It's Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Family. I've been studying self-help. I'm 58, probably since I got let loose out of college, 2022. That book made the greatest change, the single greatest change in my entire life. It's like phenomenal. And it talks about all this stuff about mostly acceptance of yourself because of all that twisted shit. Yeah, that was heavy stuff if you ever get a chance to check it out.
Yeah.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Let's talk about some of my favorite of Perfect Circle tracks. So 13th Step, speaking of funny, speaking of isms, it's one of my all-time favorite records. You talk about Gilmour. I thought your songwriting on there, the perfect ebb and flow and emotional balance on every track. It was just a phenomenal job. Really awesome stuff. The Outsider, the record was released in 2003. I was wondering when that song was written, and if you could talk about the backstory.
2001, probably. I remember that.
If you even remember.
I went on vacation and brought an acoustic guitar, and I remember it's funny, starting that song in a beautiful place in Hawaii in a hotel room, which is. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
That kind of was the only thing that came out of that vacation, but that was like, it's funny. Just thinking about 9/11 was yesterday. It was right before that. It was like July of 2001, I think. And I just remember everything was,
So it was
right then.
Literally right before.
God, it was such a euphoric time. I'd just come off this big tour. I just was finally able to take a break, and that song came out, no lyrics, but just musically, and got home and was working on, making a recording studio that would become my studio to make 13th Step and Emotive and the Ashes record. And then 9/11 happened, the whole fucking world, everything changed, and everything changed. I'm sure. I would imagine, like you, I grew up in New Jersey, so I had people right there in the city. My best friend worked on the floor of the stock exchange. He was in one of the towers underneath in the subway 10 minutes before it happened, and he usually goes to get a coffee, but he didn't that day because he had to get in early, and my sister was working in the city, so it was just such an incredibly heavy thing for everybody, right? And so I just remember that song, a little bit of an anchor to that time for me, of being from this euphoric state on vacation in beautiful Hawaii, and then coming back into, I didn't really want to do much, but it's the next thing I kind of picked up the guitar to kind of work on. So I think probably a little bit of the teeth, who knows, might have come out from a little bit of that uncertainty, that time, and that, anger.
Great.
Thanks.
Great track. Of course, Gravity. I'm assuming that's such a good song. Everybody in the band got a writing credit on that one. And there's just like so much cool stuff going on in there, from the opening guitar notes to, the rhythm section is really important throughout that track. Tell me about that.
That song I started, the
Talk
riff,
about that.
God, like later 90s. And a little bit to do with like the Hellbilly Deluxe record by Rob Zombie. Like my buddy Scott Humphrey recorded that. He had an amazing home studio, which we tracked half of the Perfect Circle record at his house and half of the drums at Sound City. And they were finishing up that record, and I love a lot of that record still. I think it's really fun. I mean, like Super Beast and Living Dead Girl and Dracula. I mean, it's amazing.
Phenomenal.
And Danny Lohner played guitar on that record and had a lot to do with that. But I just kind of was inspired by that, and the riff for Gravity was very much in line with that record. Like it was dun, 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 dun. It was a heavy halftime drudge. It was like the Melvins meets Rob Zombie. And so we were done with Meredith Noms tour. We went into SIR, which I never did. I we always rehearsed at this place Leeds up in North Hollywood, which then was done. And went into SIR and had the whole band come down to play without Maynard, just Josh, Troy, Paz, and I. And I just kind of came in with that riff and said, let's just try and write a song together. That was, like, I'm just coming in with this. I'm offering this up, And as I'm kind of breaking it down and quieting it down and playing it, it just started coming together. It was just this kind of very organic, collaborative feel that the rest of it came into play. And there was kind of a whole Jane's Addiction trajectory part that never really made it onto the record that maybe someday I'll release, as like a B-side. But yeah, it was a really cool thing. And it was written at SIR in Hollywood, just with four of us, musically. Yeah.
Phenomenal track. Just a phenomenal
track. It's one of my favorites.
Every time I listen to it.
Of all Perfect Circle songs, I think Arestus, Gravity, are kind of up there with my kind of most.
They're great tracks. So let's talk about the new record, What Normal Was. So obviously this album's more ambient and electronica, less guitar and less riff driven than your other work. And I watched an interview of you a while back, and you said you took a break from guitar around 2014 to focus on keyboards. So I was wondering did these songs come from that period of time, or?
Some are newer. I can say the oldest songs, the last song on the record, Stars, is one that I played during the very last Ashes of Ide shows. So it wasn't quite complete. And I had that song and just thought there was one thing missing. And Johnette Napolitano from Concrete Blonde, who helped me on the first Ashes record, kind of called her back up and gave her that. And she wrote that line, I will always shine on you. So it was, and the melody. So it was just like that little icing on the cake. And then again, like I talked about before, I went back to the original kind of demo of it, which was, I guess, in that Susie and the Banshees Cocteau Twins kind of aesthetic, and just kind of stuck with it and, kind of flushed it out in ambient drone keyboard, vibe. And then once I had Josh play my drum machine beat on it, it just kind of took on an organic, niceness that is what it is now.
Before we started recording, you were saying you hadn't played guitar in a while.
Yeah. I just don't play all that much anymore. And I think, Some of it is a little bit of a superstitious thing, like playing a little too much, getting in too much of patterns. For me, I worry maybe that I'm going to stay there and get stuck in writing, you know. And I have a I have an upright piano in my house now that's sort of new. It's only about 6 years old for me, or it's a 1909 Steinway upright, right? That
Oh,
I got
wow.
actually from Paz Lynch Ten's father,
Yeah.
who's a broker, a piano broker. Uh, he hooked me up with it, so it's awesome. And just to walk past it and plop down and put up your phone and record something. That's kind of what my songwriting. It's like for me, it's a great way to write songs. Like it's just, I never did it before. I was always writing on guitar or one piece at a time and taking a long time between the accompaniment, like a guitar line that then the bass might get added a year later or something like that. And obviously with
Okay.
piano, you've got two hands and you kind of hum a melody on top. So, yeah, it's just that new way of writing for me has kind of been great. And it's kind of like the guitar becomes secondary, and becomes more of like, I kind of explain it like the tantric sex of music. You're building up all this angst to go and play. Like a lot of times I pick up a guitar now and I go, I forget that I can play. Like I do surprise myself that I'm not a great player, but like I do forget that I can play because I struggle so much with keyboard and piano, and I just kind of get by that. I pick up the guitar and like, oh wow, this part would be cool, and then I can kind of write and throw it down and record with it instead of trying to perfect it. I just kind of
Yeah.
like see what first comes from it. It just seems to work for me. Like just to hold back on playing too much. But lately, I just picked up a guitar, like I was telling you before we started recording, like just under the past week, like the past 4 or 5 days, I've just been, I'm going to try and play guitar some more. I'm going to, like this past tour that I just did, and for this new record, I'm in standard E tuning, which I haven't been in 30 years. Like I've been in C sharp since the early 90s. So it's not really lends itself to go figuring out or playing other people's songs like I did when I was a kid. So I was
Sure.
like, okay.
Definitely.
I was like, all right, I'm gonna go figure out how to play Bark at the Moon like I wanted to when I was a kid. And found this guy, Ben Eller. I think it's his name, Ben Eller. He's got like a guitar YouTube page, and I was like,
Ben Lacey?
no, is it Ben? I want to look it up. He's
He's
an awesome
from
teacher.
Kentucky?
Yeah, I think so. Or Nashville, maybe. Or I don't know.
Redheaded guy?
Nope. No,
Oh, okay.
I'm going to tell you right now. Let's see. I'm following him. Yeah, Ben Eller.
Okay.
Eller. Yeah, like he's breaking down Bark of the Moon, like things I could never hear because now there's the isolated
Pretty
tracks.
cool.
Like everyone's got isolated tracks kind of trickling out. And I was like, this is really fun and really challenging. Like there's no way I could play it all. But yeah, I actually I DM'd him and he hit me back, and I said, brother, man, this is some tough and fun stuff. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm going to see where that takes me. Next thing you know, I'm going to have like sweep picking on the next APC record.
Now you're going to have another guitar record next now, obviously. When I first got the album, I looked at the names of the songs and I see this song called Free and Weightless. And
did I lose you?
My first thought.
Oh, there you go.
What's that?
Oh, I lost you for a second.
When I first got the record and I looked at the names of the songs, I see Free and Weightless. And my first thought is, wow, I would love to be free and weightless. I'm going to ask this guy. I'm going to ask you how to get there. So I've been wanting to get the inside secret on how to be free and weightless because I'd love to be there.
I don't know, man. I have felt like I have been told that by other people that are going down the muck and mire and helping them through. And then, of course, I want to figure out how to be there when I'm down in my own muck, And
yeah.
I kind of wrote that song much more from a place of envy that I saw between two people that I wrote it about. Like one just very envious and almost a little jealous that somebody could be. Like, how dare you be free and weightless? Like, how dare you not be down in my in my personal hell. But yeah, I just, again, the kind of exploration or just thinking about ego is always kind of interesting to me, and that's kind of one of those songs that touches on it.
Man, like what a interesting, that's very creative to think about that you're writing it from that standpoint of someone else being, and that's pretty clever, man.
Oh, thanks.
That's really good. Yeah. And I hear you on ego, man. I can get along pretty much with anybody, but I hate like an arrogant person. It really rubs me the wrong way. It's just bothered because like there's no reason for it. You know, when your kid gets sick, tell me what that does and how that serves you. You know, when your wife's sick or something, you know what I mean? How does that help anyone, you or anybody else? It's weird with me.
I think ego can be, you know, but there's that, but there's also the ego of us getting in our own way, of like the not giving permission to call your freaking record your own name. You know, like that's another part of ego. That's a self-sabotaging part of it too, you know?
Yeah, and, very much.
It depends though. Again, that's how you're wired. Some people need an ego check and some people need an ego boost, you know, like then what roll of the dice you were given that makes you have to struggle with one side of that or the other, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's dials. I mean, that is another thing. The older I get, you could see like there's a, you know, psychopathy dial, right? And there's an empathy dial, and you don't want to be, you certainly want to be a little more empathetic, but you don't want to be all empathy, where every time you see a dead squirrel on the side of the road, your day is shot and you can't function, you know, and you don't want to be on the psychopathic dial all the way up, obviously, but you want a little bit of self-preservation. You want, you know, more of trying to, you know, get into the hearts and minds and feel what it is to have another human being across from you. You know, there's no, you know, everything in moderation, including moderation, right? Like, so it's a little bit of that. And I think those are, as much as us, you know, us sitting here talking about this stuff and getting heady, it's like you want to drop it all in your real life, right? We're not talking this way in our everyday life, but it is interesting in discovery, and especially for me in like songs I'm listening to, whether I'm inserting that on something I've heard, which I don't even know if the artist meant that, or it's like something that's under the hood of something that I'm trying to go for within my own music. But you know, hopefully it's coming off a little more simple than that. I don't want to be too on the nose about any of this, because at the end of the day, you're there to let these things be an interpretation and a soundtrack to whoever the listener is and what they're going through at the time. You know, I think it's a delicate balance of trying to write songs. Yeah.
Well, speaking of that, empathy and the empathy, Poison Flowers. And again, to whatever extent you're comfortable answering this, Billy, I really like the lyrics. I tend to rescue, because it's just, I tend to rescue is just the part I play. Allure of the train wreck, can't look away. But then you say, I'm redirecting my energy from these poison flowers and back to things and those who truly matter. Is that, again, to whatever extent you're comfortable, is that sort of
that's a pretty
autobiographical?
Good line.
That's fucking excellent. Are you kidding me?
Kidding. When you read it like that
was good.
Like it.
That was good. I like that.
Is it autobiographical? Sure. Yeah.
That's heavy, man.
But
that's
I mean,
stuff.
I don't feel alone in that, you know, bucket that I'm putting myself in. You know, like that's, yeah. I mean, I don't know that Maynard and I didn't truly bond on that sentiment from the beginning. You know, that's a powerful drug to be, you know, partaking in, the whole rescue. You know, and again,
yeah,
who are we to rescue, and what do you know? Again, it's like it's funny keeping things just out of focus enough in life and theory. The theology of whatever you think things are, and not having it all figured out. You're like, I remember talking to my kids about this a little bit, like what's the easiest age to be, you know, and you know, life hopefully is like this, right? You have all these like ebbs and flows, but hopefully it's like the stock market. You're going from left to right. Hopefully the trajectory is
Yeah.
going up. But there does come like this diminishing returns of knowing too much, and how much do you really want to know? If you want to get back to being free and weightless, I mean, who's the happiest? Who, where are these blue zones in Earth, and who's living the longest? And is it because they're like the people dredging within, drilling down on the most pressing questions of human existence, or are they eating right, sleeping enough, and not worrying too much, and not stressed out, and having loving community around them? Like there's as much as alluring.
Dude, you're 100%.
As alluring
You're
as this
100% right.
to kind of talk about it, and here we are talking about it, but it's like, at the end of the day, you do have to be smart enough to let things go and just be, go smell the roses, go take a walk, get some sunlight on your skin, and have a connection, and go ask the girl or the boy out and take a risk, like we talked about, letting go of our obsessions to hiding behind a screen, like there's a lot of these things that, we have to like learn a lot to let go of a lot. It's like being in martial arts, right? You have to know a lot. You're not going to use every single thing, but come time when the pressure's on, you're going to just be able to do what's right in the moment. And so, I don't know, think about songwriting a little bit in the same way.
Yeah, I think for all these things, it's like, for me anyway, I always think about it's acceptance. The reason I think about this shit is because I don't accept myself for certain. I want to be a little better. I don't understand it, or and you're right. That doesn't get you closer to free and weight. That gets you farther fucking away from free and weightless. Yeah. The whole, so how do you balance between? Well, I can accept others, not a problem, but it's how do I accept myself and my own flaws, and then balance that to get free and weightless. It's tough.
I don't know if you meditate.
For me, it's tough anyway.
Meditation, but
I do.
But there's a loving kindness practice, right? So the easier thing is for you to forgive someone easy, right? Like the starting of that whole practice is, it's hard to start if you make mission one to forgive yourself, it's almost impossible, right? To find that. And the easier thing is to go to someone that has low stakes. I don't know. Things went well with your kindergarten teacher, so you think back of Mrs. Rhinesmith and go, I wish her well. Like really concentrating your energy on, like, I hope Mrs. Rhinesmith at this point in her geriatric life.
Like a win. You're looking for a guaranteed
exactly.
win.
You're not looking for, that thing I fucked up on, that I lied to that person and did this horrible thing.
Yeah.
That I didn't come clean about. You don't want to get into that right away. That's the black belt level.
Yeah.
So
get some wins under your belt.
So I think a lot of people struggle with it. And I think a lot of people that should struggle with it don't. There's
yeah.
So that's a tough one though. And again, dials, too much of it, you don't want to just be sunken into a gloomy mess of a puddle of emotion. But again, that's the dance that we're trying to do. That's our upward trajectory.
Yeah. Great track. Great. I give you a lot of credit. There's some great lyrics in there, man. EXP, is that the name of the song, or is that what it's called? Okay. I read somewhere that's a letter to your kids.
The whole record in a way is, but not verbatim every track, but no, there's other ones I think are even more direct letter to my kids, that started as such. But and now the cat's out of the bag a little bit for them. But, when you start, when I start a record, you need a North Star to point at. That was kind of my North Star to point at.
Yeah.
Because it has the most weight. If you're a parent and you care about your children, which I think most hopefully do, that you're the firepower, there's a lot of it there, so, I think just that track in particular, I don't know. I don't want to get into too much of what I think it's about. I think some of these lyrics are pretty, I guess, because I wrote them, but I think they're easy to figure out. But I would say there's other tracks on this record that are a little more pointed at somebody that I'm seeing struggle with something. And And, that's, I don't know, that's good, a good fuel for writing a song, I guess.
Billy, what would you say your top 3 musical experiences have been, and what made them so memorable?
One of which was 2009, I guess, playing uh, that Bohemian Rhapsody cover with Maynard at the Staples Center. Oh, I don't know if you heard this story, but I just told this on Rick Beato's interview I did with
I have
him.
not.
We were talking about this. We hadn't worked together in 6 years at that point, and Maynard called me up to go play this cover song. We'll play Bohemian Rhapsody at the Staples Center for this, video game rollout for Guitar Hero, basically, which is funny. But it was that moment of learning that song that everyone knew and I had never played before. That was one of the most challenging things I'd ever done,
Yes.
especially just the lack of time. I didn't have much time to prep for it. And I think that was one of the things I felt the most accomplished on, like if it was, for me, it was, passing the Series 7 or the bar or something like that. I kind of,
yeah, sure.
I think, of course, the getting the first Perfect Circle record into shape. And I could think about being in the summer of 99 and where those songs were, to the pressure on of like, I quit my day job. I was working for Guns N' Roses at the time. And, it was something known that Axl and I had talked about that I eventually was going to go. I mean, I had these things, and he was super supportive of it. And he was supportive of it in theory, talking about it ahead of time, like just, like he wanted it to win, so to speak. And it felt great. But it was okay. Now the pressure's really on to make this. You've had your whole life to make your first record, and like, you're saying to somebody, judge me on this, and then to have it come out the way it did, I was really just happy with the my contribution to the record. And there's many people and many things I could thank for along the way, and to get me to that place. And yeah, it was a moment in time. It's like, the luck is preparation meets opportunity, right? Like, I just happened to be in that moment when I was ready for the world of music at that time to accept what we were up to.
So first, Bohemian Rhapsody, getting the first A Perfect Circle album into shape. What would be number 3?
Yeah, I mean, releasing my first solo record. And, it's funny because you always, it's like having a kid, right? It's the happiest day of your life when you release a new record. But this kid's special, like this one's, yeah, it's something
good for very,
you. This first Ashes record was really, a big undertaking, of course. But this one, I just felt like I got to a place where I'm really proud of it. Whereas the first Ashes record, there was definitely, art is never finished but abandoned, and I could kind of say that was true with that record. There's things I had to cut, a few moves that I thought maybe I could tighten up more, but I had to go. And this record, the pandemic, a little happy accident, or at least a silver lining of it, was we were mixing in March of 2020. And so the record was
right when it hit.
Right when it hit. I was thinking it was the 11th of March when I started mixing the record. And so got one song done, and then pandemic hit, and the world, kind of stopped. So with the guy who was mixing the record, Matty Green, he's a local guy, but I've never met him in person. We were doing it remotely. We just kind of took our time and go, well, let's just make sure, our families are good, and let's just get our bearings, and then we'll come back and revisit this. And then in a week or two, we just said, hey, how about another song? He goes, great. And I sent him the tracks, and then we did it remotely. I listened on my studio. He was at his. And it gave me like the ability to go tighten up little details that I might not have before. So I think as far as like a record that is to its completion, it might be the first record I've ever made that's like exactly the way I want it to be, you know? So that was nice. It was something that I think the pandemic afforded. And then I honestly, and now this isn't probably good to admit, but like I had so much positive energy around this record for so long. And I'd say there was a couple false starts. We were going to release some music in 2000, at the end of 2000, and then it was going to be the beginning of 21. And then we kept kind of pushing. And I kind of lost my steam, honestly, at the end. And like by the end of summer of 21, when I was like, really, we're going into another another wave of this.
All right. So, Billy, what were some of the low points or dark periods that you've had to deal with in life, and how did you get through those?
I think earliest one I can think is like insomnia. You know, like I think when I
Oh
got
my
to be
God.
in like seventh grade, around there, for some reason couldn't sleep, and it really wasn't even that big a deal. I've gone through worse bouts of it since, but I mean that was a time when you can't sleep and you just then the world has a different filter. I mean, literally, when we think about, you slip on glasses and it has a dark red filter, you're like, I know I'm seeing the same places, but God, it looks different and it feels different. Everything feels different. And yeah, it's a horrible feeling. I can just remember that. But
Oh,
getting through it, and I remember going to my guidance counselor, and it was seventh grade. I went to, I forget his name, came in there to talk about it. I mean, it's basically a de facto therapist, right? It's one guy dealing with 400 kids' problems. And I go in there, and he was cool, and he was kind of like a hip, probably, I'm sure this, he's an old man to me, but I was probably 35. And he goes, well, okay. He just listened to what I had to say, and he goes, well, just hang here for a bit. I'm going to do a couple things. And he put on, God, what was that? What was the video when we were kids, like with all the hot models dressed the same? Is it Simply Irresistible, or like, no, it was not
oh, by Robert Palmer.
Robert Palmer. It was one of those Robert Palmer songs that just had come out that year.
Yeah.
And I remember just sitting there and listening to it. And now again, we've gotten into this whole like free will. You're given like DNA. You roll the dice, right, when you come out of the womb, and whatever you are, for whatever reason, that to me, I know people in my life that would go, the hell is this guy doing? I'm spilling my guts about being absolutely depressed about insomnia, and he puts on a fucking song like, and for whatever reason, for me, it's like, oh, it's a simplicity of like, just let it go. We're
And
not
you
gonna,
got that at that age?
yeah, on some level, I think
Wow.
like again,
Good for
I'm
you.
not to be applauded for it, but just like I'm lucky that message hit. There was a few things, and maybe it was just a couple things that somebody that I looked up to said that just kind of hit the right way. Sometimes there's just like these little bits of wisdom that you either take or you don't. And I think
Yeah.
I've met people in my life that can hear the same advice and go like, man, fuck that simple shit. It's not so simple, like, or, and sometimes it is, it just depends what it is and getting out of your way for it. So I think that was like a little reinforcement message as to what insomnia can be. It can be medical, it can be a lot of things, but sometimes it can be just getting at it, you have to get out of your own way and not chase. We had talked a little about meditation, and, some of what meditation is you're sitting there meditating. And if it's a guided meditation, it's just being instructed to pay attention to certain things. And mostly it's the breath, right? Because that's the one thing everyone has. And if the chatter starts coming in of like, oh my God, this bill is coming due, this deadline is coming, whatever the stress is that's coming into your life, and you can't shut it off.
I got my to-do list. Right.
Yeah. It's just like,
that's what always pops in my
the
head.
biggest thing is not chasing that. So when I first learned meditation, it's just like, let it go, acknowledge it. That's interesting. And then let it go. And the latest way of the Sam Harris part that I understand it to be is just like, almost like, okay, don't what does it feel like to have that pressing feeling right now? Like almost like lean into it a little bit, not
Right.
make it worse, but like, oh my God. And on top of this deadline, I've got this deadline. It's like, now what is it? How is it making you feel at that moment? So I think that, this is going way beyond your question, by the way, but it's just, I wish I knew more of that back then. I wish I knew more of like how to figure out who I was as a person, as a younger person. But back when you're a teenager, especially, you're just kind of grasping at straws of what the hell. You're thrust within this world, especially a more exciting world, as you get to be like in your teen years, that you're just trying to get by. And but I remember that moment of insomnia was probably like the first thing that I really felt lost about.
Yeah. You mean you didn't have your shit together when you were 12, Billy? I can't believe
13. But 13.
How dare you? What kind of person are you?
But I mean, and in working for, I'd say this too, in being 17, I started playing guitar right around 16, 17, had my high school sweetheart that I dated for a long time, broke up. At the same time, I was losing my hair. And at the end of the 80s, if you didn't have hair, it was not in vogue yet to be shaving your head like you and I. And I really did have that feeling of like, it's over. It's fucking over. Like, if you don't have long hair,
I can understand that.
And you wanted to be, in music in some kind of way, even though like I wasn't fully looking to be in Cinderella or something like that, but you still had to be. I just had that feeling of like, shit, I'm never going to do it again. I'm not going to be in a band.
Man, you poor thing.
That moment of feeling like that, I do remember that sucked big time.
That's heavy, man. Yeah, it's tough being a kid.
Yeah,
that's a heavy one, man.
Yeah, but I wound up working 4 bands, like I said, and I think maybe part of that was great, right? Like looking back, I started working 4 bands instead of like going forward with the confidence of feeling I could be in a band. And who knows, maybe that had something to do with it. It's like that whole appearance thing. And as I started working 4 bands and finding my niche, and I was on a tour with Fishbone, and I think we were on tour with Primus, and 2 of those guys, I think Tim Alexander had shaved his head, I think, and then the tour manager too. And I just like, they shaved my head. We were going to Australia, and I was like, yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
There was this other guy, Jamie. I forget. But it was like being around the company that it normalized the whole thing. And then I felt like, oh,
that's awesome.
And then you found like, well, not that having a shaved head is my identity, but it got rid of the obstacle, the distraction, the whatever that was,
Yeah.
So that was a moment of coming out of like a dark place about that thing that didn't quite it consumed my life for a little bit, especially at the end of high school or right after I graduated high school. But especially once making that turn, it kind of, it felt like, okay, there's a path forward in the way I feel.
No, I could talk. Yeah, that's an important thing for a 17-year-old, man. And especially a musician. I totally get that, man.
Yeah. Especially in the 80s. Again, flashing back to now, people could hear this today, even 10 years ago, and be like, whatever, dude, get over it. Just shave your head. Everyone does. Nobody. Dude, there was nobody doing it unless you were a skinhead or you came out of chemotherapy. There was like not a lot of people, shaving their head.
Right. I know. Both of us look pretty good with bald heads, so it's all right. There we go. In fact, I'm only going to have bald people on this show from now on.
I know. Yeah, fuck all these other people. Fuck all these poodle hair.
Fuck all these people with hair. Yeah. Even if you're a woman, you're coming on here, you're shaving.
Yeah.
Talk about, I know you said downward spiral tour was just insane. What was like, how did it become so nuts? I saw an interview, 137 guitars destroyed.
It was like chaos.
Cliff Notes version.
It was just constant destruction.
On whose part?
Of the band.
I'm lost with.
Yeah, it was just the band, and Trent leading the charge. I mean, it was just like, the music was great. The production was incredible. He was an incredible performer. As whatever substance he was or wasn't on, I don't know. But I kind of kept disconnected from the bands. I didn't get deep in there. I did think like my
Right.
way of surviving this world is by not becoming entrenched too much within the politics of band, because I could kind of see the pitfalls of that you could be, hero of the week and asshole of the year very quickly.
Man, that is very clever of you.
Wow.
That is very clever of
but
you. And as a younger person, especially.
I liked the work, like I did. I appreciated, like, I liked being a tech, I liked being around the music, especially being around that. There was so much, Trent was a really inspiring boss to have because he knew a lot about a lot of things, but the putting on a good show, I mean, that was just part of the show. I mean, it was really about the chaos mixed with great and experimental music. And that was just the job at hand, was you're going through warfare. You have a constant triage department for the instruments that you just have to keep everything up and running and foresee anything that could go wrong. And that's what it felt like every day. So, but it was like something that, you've got, anyone that's like volunteered time to a charity or given themselves to a cause can know that feeling. And this was, not a life or death situation, but that's what it felt like in the moment, is that we're going through warfare together. And if you saw someone struggling, you go like, I saw that during Down In It, you're usually struggling with this. You want me to get this cable out of the way for you so you can get this, strike this piece of gear. And it was a lot of that, instead of like, it's not my job. Like there wasn't that, you weren't going to last in that crew if it's not my job. I guess right now,
well, it goes back.
Did you read the new term called the quiet quitting right now? Like people talking about quiet quitting.
I kind of perused a little bit of it, and I'm so like, I'm off of fads, because like every week there's a new thing to read about, and I'm like, I can't keep up.
Well, it's just something that struck me of like people quiet quit. I think it was Bill Maher. I think I was watching, Real Time or something like that, and they were talking about that, and just how people don't put their heart into it, and just like the devaluation of work.
Okay, is that what it's about? Yeah, that makes sense.
That's what I understood it to be, and it's true. And
so shitty work ethic.
Yeah, and from a young age, even if you're working at the ice cream parlor, don't be a dick. You're there to work. Someone's paying you to do it. I'm coming in to get an ice cream. You could make my day better and me leave that place feeling better and be nice, just hold the door open for somebody that otherwise might have had the shittiest day and done something horrific. There's little trickle butterfly effects that can happen. And, some things are stepping stones and whatever it is, but you're going to get somewhere eventually. I don't know. I just think like if you're doing a job, give it 100%. And that's what that job was all about. You had to give, you had to, or you weren't going to survive it. And it wasn't fair to, the people you're working for either, but you would have been fired. I mean, it's like, for sure.
Yeah.
I felt lucky to have it, that job.
That's great. All right. 3 more questions, because we spent a lot of time and I really appreciate it. Best decision you ever made?
I mean, to get married and have kids and have a family, I think that, and I don't even know, hesitating on that. Like it's, having kids, toughest job you'll ever love. I mean, I know Army coined that term, but like, there's things that people are sprinters or marathon runners, and I'm a little bit more of a sprinter. So the marathon of raising children is, you're only 37 years old having a 2-year-old once, and there's no practice for it.
Yeah.
And then to be
totally no practice
dealing with a tween, and you're only that age once, and you'll go through that for the first time once. And it's like, it's a wild ride, but the most fulfilling ride also. And like we talked about, hopefully as your kids get older and they appreciate more of what you hopefully brought to them, and and also understanding the deficits that you had and how you were a fuck up, and like or I was a fuck up, or as we're all
Yeah.
doing this thing, like, please forgive me for not being as good as I could have been, or you can thank me for what you think I did right, but again, am I really to take credit for that? I don't know. I'm
Yeah. No, you know what, man, my kids are, in the last 2 weeks, two of the three of them have sent us texts, just like thanking us. And I'm like, God, how lucky am I to get,
awesome.
just, I appreciate you being, I'm like, like that's, after 30 years of putting me through hell, you get that.
Yeah.
But it was just very nice.
That's awesome.
I don't expect that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel lucky.
But since this is a music centric show, I think, like, that's why I also hesitate saying that. It's like, we've gotten heady or deep on a lot of things, but I mean, picking up a guitar, I think I loved music so much, listening to music. It's, listening is a passive exercise, right? Unless you're going to the store and buying the records. But it's like, I couldn't listen enough. Like I had to take it to the next level, which was like trying to give back. And I think that moment of feeling like, okay, why am I doing this? Because I do remember that picking up a guitar, playing for about 6 months and really loving it, getting better at it, and then thinking, like, I'm going to start writing songs. Why? I'm going to try and write songs to try and get, which I've been lucky enough to have this now, to have somebody come tell me that I've done for them what all these musicians have done for me. Or I've done for them what these musicians, like, the shit that music gets you through,
Yeah.
And it sounds weird reading it, and we all go through it. Most people, I feel bad for people that don't experience that, but like the connection that music can have to something horrible you're going through, or be the companion to something great you've experienced. I just wanted that. I wanted to be able to, have somebody someday come to me and say, like, your music made me pick up a guitar, or your music got me through this horrible situation, or your music was like, will forever remind me of this family vacation, like, so I'm really lucky in that I've had, many people say that to me.
As it should be. You've written some phenomenal tracks, man. Some phenomenal songs.
Thank you, brother.
Any hobbies outside of music?
Photography or cooking. I don't know if that's a hobby, but
yeah, that's the number one hobby of musicians, by the way.
Yeah. And having food allergies, as we were kind of talking about something just a few minutes ago, I was thinking, like, okay, me losing my hair, and like maybe that etched me towards the tech side of things behind the scenes, because I was too thinking, like, it's not going to happen because I don't look the traditional way. I'm not going to be a Midnight Oil, so that's the only other example I had of a musician bald at the time. Developing food allergies in my late 20s. And I really do think it's because I worked the night shift with GNR, and there was one place open by the recording studio that I came in at night with Axel, and we started working at 10 or 11 or 12 at night. And my breakfast was basically chicken Parmesan every day for 2 years at some shitty place, and, up in the valley.
What were you doing with them?
I was working on Chinese
democracy.
Like
mastering?
No, okay. No. I was I came in as a guitar tech for the first couple of days with Robin Fink, who was in Nine Inch Nails. I got called to audition for Guns N' Roses. And then I came in with the understanding that this was a temporary situation, like, because I had saved money with Bowie, enough money to give it a shot to make my own music. So really, if I didn't work for GNR, I would have maybe made a play to put out a record in 1997. And,
interesting.
But I wound up staying with them for a while, and I really believed in the project. And, Axel and I were close at that time, and I really wanted to see it through. And so, yeah, that fucked me up. You can't eat the same thing all the time, especially when you're under stress. And that was a pretty stressful job, but also a sleep, a circadian rhythm nightmare job. We're just like, I was doing the night shift. And so developing food allergies, I learned to, learn what they were eventually. It took some years, but then became a good cook. And I'll say this, like, music, I've got my limitations, but cooking, I'm a good cook.
Awesome, man.
I'll hold
Awesome.
my own in the kitchen.
And last question, what's been the biggest change? I'm interested in this one. What's been the biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years, Billy? And how much of that change has been intentional and how much has been a natural part of aging?
I think like the dropping of guitar, I think, making a conscious effort to like, I'm going to put the guitar down and just try this other medium of writing, using the keyboard more to write, made me think about music a little differently. I think it had me feel like I saw a more bird's eye view of music, even than being just kind of one connected with a guitar for the most part. I mean, I had to always, like in producing, that's your whole job, is to like, you play your part, but then you have to look at the whole view of it. But in writing on keyboard, I think it becomes more apparent quicker. So, I mean, it's a little one, but I tried to, when I put down the guitar, let's say, I kind of picked up from the video side of things. Ken Andrews from Failure and I were talking about doing like
I had him on here, man.
Oh, really? We were talking about.
He was really funny. He'll tell you just one. So sorry. I'll tell you a funny story. We start the interview, right? And he goes, it was really funny. He was like a little distant in the beginning of the interview. And then at the end of the interview, he goes, I just want you to know something. He goes, I'm sick of fucking interviewers, man. And then like, I figured this is going to be another interview. He goes, and you really surprised. He goes, I really had a nice time talking with you. I was like, okay, thank you. But it was just funny because you could see the vibe. It was like, anyway, great guy.
Yeah.
And talented musician.
Yeah. He's an intense guy, but he's, he and I, even though we're pretty different personalities, we have a very similar interest, skill set, combination. We talked about having a company of two, like, okay, let's take on mixing projects, producing, making commercials or music videos and things like that. We're both really into video. We both had different equipment that would complement each other. So, but that's around the time that I started thinking about getting more into video, and I started getting into After Effects and Premiere and editing and filming and stuff like that. So a lot of things changed in my interest to go almost from music to add on into video, which is funny. I don't do it more because I do it much more as like a pastime than I do as like for a career, but I really should be starting to make music videos more than I do.
You really should. And you know what else, man? As an outsider looking in, you have to produce all those records. It's not easy. Yeah. So you must have I'm not saying this to like kiss your ass, but I mean, you must have a very, very balanced bandwidth for work and tolerance and, just keeping things moving forward. And that's the skill set.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. I should produce more. I appreciate it. And I want to produce other bands more. And I'm just now talking with a band about, maybe writing or producing or doing something with them right now. Well,
dude, hold on right now. If somebody is interested in working with you as a producer, right? Is there a contact thing on your website?
Yeah. It'd be through my manager, really. Dino Paredes.
Okay.
That should be easy to find.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So go to Billy's website. It's billyhowerdel.com. And I'm serious. Yeah. Let's get some shit happening. But don't just send him a note. Hey, I want you to produce me. Send him some music. Why do you think he might be a fit? And what you're looking for in a producer. If you've had experience with other producers, what's the good, the bad, the ugly? And this way he can like make an intelligent decision and listen to the music and say, yeah, this is a fit. It's not a fit. And then he'll get back to you.
Yeah.
There you go. We just launched your production career, man.
Yeah.
Dude, man. Yeah. Cause it's like, I meant to tell you that. Listen, man, I can't thank you enough for just being a lovely guy to talk to. I really enjoyed talking with you.
I really enjoyed this. It was great.
Yeah, man. Same here. Thank you so much. I want to tell people where to find you and how to support you. First of all, the new record, What Normal Was. It's a very cool record. I would love you to listen to it at a minimum. If you want to buy the record, go to the merch store on Billy's website. It's Billy Howerdel, 1L HOWERDEL.com. Go to the merch store on there. Follow him on Instagram at Billy Howerdel. Also, he's just cranking up his YouTube channel, so go there and subscribe to it. It's, again, Billy Howerdel. He's got a lot of stuff there from Reprise Records. You can follow that one if you want to, but follow his I'm sorry, I apologize. Rise Records. You could follow that one too, but his one is the one with a small photo of him on there. So follow his YouTube channel.
I really didn't give a shout out enough to Danny Lohner, who helped me produce this record. It was such a big part of it. And that was, something we really didn't drill down into enough. Danny, who was
I'm glad you did.
Back when I started working for Nine Inch Nails. So and then he just did this last tour with me. And, we just did a U.S. tour. And we're going to get back out again.
Are you touring more?
Yeah.
When?
We were going to do a European tour and it fell apart. We were opening for somebody that will remain nameless. But so that kind of that was my fall.
Are you going to be?
So I don't know what we'll pick it back up soon.
Where is that going to be posted? Is it on your website?
Oh yeah,
or
it'll be
on social media or both?
Facebook and I've been posting on Perfect Circle site too, just as a little shout out.
Okay, very cool. Any chance you'll be coming down here, man?
Yeah. Where are you at?
Nobody comes to Florida. I'm in Florida. Nobody comes here.
We didn't on the last run. Yeah. It's funny. Local promoters will decide if they, think you got a show down there. And our closest was Atlanta and New Orleans.
It's tough to come down here. It's a big state and a lot of distance in between the stops.
Yeah, for sure.
But if you come down here, we'll solve the rest of the world's problems together.
Where are you at? What part of Florida?
I'm in Tampa, on the West Coast. Yeah. All right, man. Well, hang on 1 second. We'll wrap up. And thank you very much for everything. Everybody, please check out the new record, What Normal Was, and check out Ashes Divide. Keep telling myself it's all right. That's a very cool record. And of course, I mean, if you haven't heard Perfect Circle, man, get out of your rock that you're hiding under and listen. But thank you for everything. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, please share it on your social media channels. We appreciate your support. Thank you very much to Billy Howerdel for just being a wonderful human being and a great guy and a very fun hang. And I don't believe you've never read a book or even that you've read one book.
Audio tape.
And
listen to him.
Oh, okay. That's the same thing. It's stimulating. I knew you had to read a bunch. Most important, everybody, remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Until next time, peace and love, everybody. I am out. Billy, hang on a second. Thank you for everything, brother.
All right. Thanks.